The obsidian halls of the Jaxarian flagship Noxilin echoed with the footsteps of Alexander Ward, Earth's chosen emissary. His crisp gray uniform bore the insignia of the United Earth Alliance, the silver wings an emblem of hope in a galaxy rife with danger. Ward steeled himself as he approached the ornate doors of the negotiation chamber. The very future of humanity rested on his shoulders. Failure here would doom billions to the cruel whims of the Jaxarian Empire. The doors slid open, revealing a dimly lit room dominated by a large holographic display of the galaxy. 3 figures stood around it, their faces obscured by shadows. As Ward entered, they turned, and he suppressed a shudder. Jaxarians were an imposing sight. Their tall, sinewy frames were encased in angular black armor, their faces hidden behind insectoid helmets. Only their eyes were visible, burning with a cold, predatory intelligence. Ambassador Ward rasped the central figure, his voice distorted by his helmet's vocoder. "I am Lord Kellner. You stand before the might of the Jaxarian Empire. Choose your words carefully, for they may be your last." Ward held his ground, meeting Kellner's gaze unflinchingly. "I come on behalf of the United Earth Alliance with a simple message. We desire peace, but we will not submit to tyranny. The free peoples of Earth will not be slaves to your empire." Kellner laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You mistake us, human. We offer not slavery, but order, the protection of the empire. You have seen the chaos of the cosmos. Only under our rule can there be true stability." "Stability built on the bones of conquered worlds," Ward retorted. "We've seen the atrocities your kind is capable of. The genocide, the destruction. Humanity will have no part in it." Kellner stepped forward, looming over Ward. "Humanity," he spat, as if the word left a foul taste. "Your species is young, primitive. You have not earned a place at the galactic table. You must learn humility." Ward's jaw clenched. "We may be young, but we are not afraid. We will fight for our right to self-determination, for our freedom, even against the might of your empire." There was a long, tense silence. Then Kellner spoke, his voice low and menacing. "So be it. You have sealed your fate, Ambassador." In a blur of motion, Kellner drew an angular pistol from his hip and leveled it at Ward's head. Ward's eyes widened, his hand inching towards his own concealed weapon. But he was too slow. The gun barked once, a lance of searing light. Ward crumpled to the floor, a smoking hole in his forehead. His lifeless eyes stared accusingly at Kellner. "Arrogant primates," Kellner muttered, holstering his weapon. "They never learn." He turned to his subordinates. "Send the recording to their leaders. Let them witness the price of defiance. Then prepare the fleet. It is time we taught these upstarts the true meaning of power." The die had been cast. With a single shot, the Jaxarian Empire had ignited the fires of war. They thought it would be a quick, brutal lesson. They were wrong, for in killing Alexander Ward, they had awakened a sleeping giant, a giant that had been preparing for this day, a giant that would stop at nothing to avenge their fallen and protect their way of life. The Terran-Jaxarian War had begun, and the galaxy would tremble before its fury. The holographic recording of Ambassador Ward's execution played out over the stunned silence of the UEA High Command. As the final shot rang out and Ward's body crumpled lifelessly to the floor, a collective gasp rippled through the room. Admiral Marcus Hale clenched his fists, barely contained rage simmering beneath his grizzled exterior. Ward had been a friend, a good man. He didn't deserve to die like that, cut down by some arrogant Jaxarian bastard. "This is an act of war," Hale growled, his voice cutting through the shocked murmurs. "We can't let this stand. The Jaxarians think they can murder our people without consequence. It's time we showed them how wrong they are." President Eliza Novak held up a hand, her face grave. "Admiral, I share your anger, but we must tread carefully. The Jaxarian Empire commands the largest fleet in the known galaxy. A direct confrontation could lead to the annihilation of our entire species. Hale leaned forward, his eyes intense. Madam President, with all due respect, appeasement will only delay the inevitable. The Jaxarians will not stop until all of humanity is under their boot. We must strike back, and strike hard. And how do you propose we do that? Asked General Lai, the head of Earth's ground forces. Our ships are outclassed by the Jaxarian fleet. It would be a slaughter. A grim smile tugged at Hale's lips. Not all our ships, General. He tapped a command into the holodeble, and a new image sprang to life. A sleek, angular warship bristling with guns and armor. Behold the Athena, the first of our new Dreadnought-class battleships. A ripple of surprise ran through the room. Novak leaned forward, her eyes widening. I thought the Dreadnought project was still in development. We've been working round the clock to get them operational, Hale said. We knew this day would come. The Athena and her sisters are the most advanced warships ever built by human hands. They're more than a match for anything the Jaxarians can throw at us. Lee frowned. How many of these dreadnoughts do we have? 3, Hale replied. The Athena, the Ares, and the Zeus. Enough to spearhead a lightning strike against the Jaxarian border outposts. We hit them hard and fast, cripple their ability to respond. Show them that humanity will not go quietly into the night. Novak was silent for a long moment, the weight of the decision heavy on her shoulders. Finally, she nodded. Do it, Admiral, but understand the gravity of this action. There will be no turning back from this path. Hale saluted. Understood, Madam President. I'll send those bug-eyed bastards back to hell where they belong. As the meeting adjourned, and the commanders dispersed to make their preparations, Hale allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. He thought of Ward, of the sacrifice he had made. I'll make them pay, Alex, he whispered. I swear it. The battered hulls of the Zeus, the Ares, and the Athena cut through the inky void of space, the distant light of alien suns glinting off their angular armor. In their cavernous hangars, fighters and bombers hung ready to be unleashed. Gun batteries swiveled in their housings, primed and hungry for the taste of Jaxarian blood. On the bridge of the Athena, Admiral Hale stood tall and resolute, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The border outpost hung in the void ahead, a spindly collection of docks and sensor arrays. It was lightly defended, arrogant in its assumed supremacy. They had no idea what was coming. All ships, battle stations, Hale ordered, his voice calm and controlled. Klaxons blared and crew rushed to their posts. The bridge hummed with barely contained energy. Hale's lips curled into a smile that held no mirth. It was the smile of a man who had looked into the abyss and chosen to fight. For Earth, he whispered. Then, louder, all ships, engage. The Dreadnought surged forward, guns blazing, and the void erupted in fire. The Jaxarian border outpost hung in space, a glittering jewel against the starry backdrop. Its spires and domes housed thousands of the Empire's finest warriors, secure in their superiority. They never saw the attack coming. The Dreadnoughts dropped out of hyperspace with a flash, their hulls shimmering with the residual energy of their jump. Before the outpost's sensors could even register the new contacts, the human ships opened fire. A storm of missiles and mass driver rounds slammed into the outpost's shields, sending ripples of angry orange across the bubble of protective energy. The Jaxarian defenses, designed to repel the weapons of a less advanced age, buckled under the onslaught. On the bridge of the Athena, Admiral Hale watched with grim satisfaction as the outpost's shields flickered and died. Gunnery, focus fire on their command spire, he ordered. Fighter wings, launch and engage any targets of opportunity. The Dreadnought's guns roared, hurling shells the size of small spacecraft at the outpost. The command spire, a towering structure at the heart of the base, erupted in a gout of flame as the rounds found their mark. Smaller Jaxarian ships, mere patrol craft against the bulk of the human battleships, swarmed from their hangars. They were met by a wave of human fighters, nimble craft that danced around their lumbering foes. The space around the outpost became a maelstrom of whirling craft, lancing beams, and searing explosions. The Jaxarians fought with the desperate ferocity of a prideful race facing an unprecedented challenge. But they were outmatched. The human ships, products of a desperate arms race and the utmost secrecy, were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Their weapons tore through armor like paper, their shields shrugged off blows that would have crippled lesser craft. And yet, it wasn't just technological superiority that drove the human assault. It was the fury of a species that had seen one of its own cut down in cold blood. Every human sailor, every pilot, every Marine, fought with the image of Ambassador Ward's lifeless body etched into their minds. They fought for vengeance, for justice, and for the right of humanity to stand tall and free among the stars. Under the relentless human assault, the outpost crumbled. Its towers toppled, its tankers belched fire, its hull ruptured to vent atmosphere and bodies into the uncaring void. In a matter of hours, what had once been a proud bastion of Jaxarian might was reduced to a shattered husk drifting in the void. On the bridge of the Athena, the crew erupted in cheers as the last Jaxarian ship winked out on the tactical display. But Admiral Hale remained stoic, his eyes fixed on the devastation they had wrought. He knew this was only the beginning. They had struck a mighty blow, but the Jaxarian Empire would not take this insult lightly. Even now, he knew, word was spreading, the Jaxarian war machine was mobilizing. The true test was yet to come. As if on cue, the communications console chimed. Hale turned, his brow furrowing as he saw the source of the transmission. It was coming from Jax Prime, the heart of the Empire itself. "Put it through," he ordered, steeling himself. The view screen flickered, and the insectoid visage of Lord Kellner filled the screen. Even across the light years, Hale could feel the rage emanating from the Jaxarian leader. "You dare," Kellner hissed, his voice dripping with venom. "You primitive apes dare to strike at the Empire. This is an act of suicide." Hale met Kellner's gaze unflinchingly. "We dare because you left us no choice. When you murdered our ambassador, when you threatened our very existence, you sealed your own fate. Humanity will not bow to your tyranny." Kellner's eyes narrowed to slits. "You have sown the wind, human. Now you shall reap the whirlwind. The full might of the Jaxarian Empire will fall upon you. We will burn your worlds, shatter your fleets, until nothing remains but ashes and the lament of your people as they beg for the mercy of the Jaxari." Hale leaned forward, his voice low and deadly. "Listen well, you arrogant insect. Humanity is not afraid of you. We have faced down horrors you can't imagine, endured trials that would break your kind. We do not beg. We do not yield, and we will never, ever stop fighting. So bring your fleets. Bring your armies. We'll be waiting." With a snarl, Kellner cut the transmission. Hale sagged back in his chair, suddenly feeling the weight of the years, of the responsibilities, pressing down on him. The die had been cast. The gauntlet thrown. There would be no turning back now. But as he looked out at the shattered remains of the Jaxarian outpost, at the resolute faces of his crew, he felt a surge of pride. Humanity would not go gently into the night. They would rage, they would fight, against the dying of the light. And if the Jaxarians wanted their pound of flesh, by all the stars in the heavens, they would pay for it in blood. The war had begun, and the galaxy would tremble before its fury. In the wake of their successful strike on the border outpost, the human fleet surged forward, striking at Jaxarian supply lines and communications hubs. The Dreadnoughts, led by the indomitable Athena, cut a swath of destruction through the Empire's perimeter. The Jaxarians reeled, unused to such savage resistance from a species they had dismissed as primitive. Their outlying fleets, caught off guard and out of position, could do little to stem the human advance. But the Empire's shock was quickly turning to rage. On Jax Prime, the Imperial Warmaster, a hulking brute named Craxus, slammed his fist on the table, cracking the hardened composite. "Enough," he roared, silencing the clamor of the assembled war council. "These humans spit on our honor, on the very foundations of our empire. This insult cannot stand." He turned to the holographic display, where the human ships glowed an angry red against the cool green of Jaxarian space. "Muster the Grand Fleet," he commanded. "Every ship, every soldier. We will drown these upstarts in their own blood." The order went out, and the might of the Jaxarian Empire began to stir. From 1,000 worlds, ships lifted off, weapons primed, soldiers ready. A tide of steel and hatred, ready to crash down on the impudent humans. In the depths of space, Admiral Hale watched the tactical display with a growing sense of unease. The Jaxarian ships were converging, a swarm of angry red triangles bearing down on the human fleet's position. "They're coming," he said, his voice grim. "The entire damned Jaxarian fleet, looks like." His tactical officer, Commander Olivia Prescott, looked up from her console, her face etched with concern. "Sir, we can't withstand that kind of firepower. Not even the Dreadnoughts." Hale nodded, his mind racing. They had always known this moment would come, when the full might of the Empire would be brought to bear. But he had hoped to have more time, to strike deeper into Jaxarian space before the counterattack came. Now they faced a choice: stand and fight, and risk annihilation, or retreat and lose the momentum they had bought with blood and fire. No, there was a third way, a dangerous gambit, but one that could turn the tide. "We hold the line," he said, his voice ringing with resolve. "We keep their fleet engaged, keep them focused on us. And while we have their attention, we strike at their heart." Prescott frowned. "Sir," Hale brought up a new display, a schematic of the Jaxarian network. "Their command and control, their logistics, it's all run through central hubs. Hiddily defended, but vulnerable to infiltration. If we can get a team inside, plant a virus, we could cripple their entire war effort." It was a desperate plan, rife with risk. But against the overwhelming numbers bearing down on them, it was their best hope. "Commander, get me Lieutenant Hawkins and his Marines, and prep a stealth shuttle. We're going to pay a little visit to Jax Prime." As Prescott relayed his orders, Hale turned back to the tactical display. The Jaxarian fleet was closing fast, a tide of steel and hatred. The Dreadnoughts moved to meet them, their hulls bristling with the promise of defiance. Behind them, the rest of the human fleet formed up, ready to sell their lives dearly. In the cold depths of space, beneath the uncaring stars, the battle lines were drawn. Human ingenuity and resolve against the might of an empire. The first shots were fired, lances of energy stitching the void. The human ships responded in kind, their weapons cutting swaths of destruction through the Jaxarian formation. The void lit up with the fury of battle, ships twisting and turning, locked in a deadly dance. The Dreadnoughts were the eye of the storm, their mighty guns laying waste to all that stood before them. But for every Jaxarian ship that fell, 2 more took its place. They pressed in, heedless of their losses, driven by rage and the implacable will of the War Master. On the bridge of the Athena, the deck shuddered beneath Hale's feet as another salvo slammed into their shields. Warning lights flashed. Damage reports flooded in. They were holding, but barely. The Jaxarian ships were taking a fearsome toll. "Come on, Hawkins," Hale muttered under his breath. "Get it done." On Jax Prime, in the heart of the Imperial Citadel, Lieutenant Jake Hawkins crept through the shadowed halls, his team moving like ghosts behind him. They had made it inside, past the layered defenses, the legions of guards, a testament to human skill and ingenuity. But their true test lay ahead. The central network hub, the nexus of the Jaxarian war machine. They emerged into a cavernous chamber, the walls lined with pulsing conduits and humming databanks. In the center, a towering spire of technology rose, glowing with a sickly green light. The heart of the beast. Hawkins moved forward, his hand tight on his weapon. Every step was a battle against the instinct to run, to hide from the malevolent presence that seemed to permeate the very air. At the base of the spire, he knelt, pulling a small device from his pack. The virus, the culmination of years of human cyber warfare research. He took a deep breath, whispered a prayer to whatever gods might be listening, and plugged it in. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the spire shuddered, the green light flickering. The conduits pulsed erratically, the databanks emitting the discordant hum. Across the Jaxarian fleet, systems began to fail. Weapons misfired, shields dropped, engines sputtered. The virus spread like a plague, turning the Empire's greatest strength against itself. On the bridge of the Athena, Hale watched in disbelief as the Jaxarian fleet faltered, their formation falling into disarray. "It's working," he breathed. "By the stars, it's working." He turned to Prescott, a fierce grin splitting his face. "Signal the fleet. All ships, advance. Press the attack." The human ships surged forward, renewed purpose driving their every move. They tore into the floundering Jaxarians, fire and steel rending the void. The tide had turned, the hunter had become the hunted. And as the last Jaxarian ship fell, its hulk drifting lifeless in the void, a cheer went up from the human fleet. Against all odds, against the might of an empire, they had held the line. They had shown the galaxy the mettle of humanity. But even as they celebrated, Hale knew this was only the beginning. The Jaxarians would not forget this humiliation, would not forgive this wound to their pride. The war would go on. But for now, in this moment, humanity had triumphed. And that was enough. The Jaxarian Grand Fleet surged forward, a tidal wave of ships and fury. At its heart, the War Master's flagship, a behemoth of dark metal and pulsing weapons, led the charge. On its bridge, War Master Craxus glared at the tactical display, his clawed hands gripping the command chair with enough force to dent the hardened material. The human fleet hung in the void ahead, a ragged line of defiance against the oncoming storm. At their center, the Dreadnoughts gleamed, their guns swiveling to track the approaching threats. Craxus snarled, a sound of pure, distilled hatred. These humans had defied the Empire, had struck at its very heart. For that, they would suffer, they would burn. "All ships," he growled, "exterminate the human filth. Leave none alive." The Grand Fleet accelerated, the void rippling in their wake. Weapons charged, targeting systems locked onto the human ships. But even as the first shots were fired, even as the battle was joined, something changed. The Jaxarian ships, paragons of precision and coordination, began to falter. Shots went wide, missing their marks by miles. Shields fluctuated and died, leaving hulls exposed. Engines sputtered and misfired, sending ships careening out of formation. On the bridge of his flagship, Craxus roared in frustration as reports of system failures flooded in. "What is happening?" he demanded, his voice a thunderous bellow. His tactical officer, a quivering subordinate, stammered a response. "My lord, it's our systems. They're not responding. It's like they're infected." Craxus's eyes widened, realization dawning like a cold sun. The humans. Somehow, impossibly, they had struck at the very heart of the Jaxarian war machine. And now that machine was tearing itself apart. In the depths of space, the human fleet watched in stunned silence as the Jaxarian advance faltered, their once unstoppable armada reduced to a milling, disorganized mess. On the bridge of the Athena, Admiral Hale leaned forward, hardly daring to believe what he was seeing. "It's working," he breathed. "The virus is working." He turned to his crew, his eyes alight with a fierce, determined fire. "This is our chance," he said, his voice ringing with resolve. "We won't get another. All ships, advance. Hit them with everything we've got." The human fleet surged forward, weapons blazing, engines roaring. They tore into the disarrayed Jaxarian lines, fire and steel rending the void. The Dreadnoughts led the charge, their mighty guns tearing through Jaxarian hulls like paper. Fighters and bombers swarmed from their hangars, darting through the chaos, picking off targets with precision and daring. It was a sight to behold, a testament to human courage and skill. Against all odds, against a foe that had seemed invincible, they were pushing back the tide. But the Jaxarians were not defeated yet. Even in their disarray, they were a formidable force. And at their head, War Master Craxus rallied his troops, his fury a palpable force. "Fight, you dogs!" he roared, his voice booming across the fleet's comm channels. "Fight, or I will kill you myself. The Empire will not fall to these primitives." Under his bellowed commands, the Jaxarian ships began to regroup, their systems slowly coming back under control. They formed a defensive line, a wall of steel and defiance, pouring fire into the advancing humans. The battle hung in the balance, the fate of galaxies teetering on a knife's edge. And in that moment, a single ship broke from the human lines, a fighter, swift and nimble, darting through the void like a silver arrow. At its controls sat Lieutenant Mira Patel, her face set in a mask of determination. She had seen the Jaxarian flagship, had seen the War Master's unshakable resolve. And she knew, with a certainty that resonated in her very bones, that if Craxus remained in command, the Jaxarians would never break. He had to fall. She wove through the chaos of the battle, dodging fire, slipping past lumbering warships. Her eyes were fixed on her target, the looming bulk of the Jaxarian flagship. It filled her view screen, a monster of metal and hate. Its guns swiveled, tracking her approach. But Mira didn't falter. With a final, defiant yell, she gunned her engines and hurtled towards the flagship's bridge. In the last second, she ejected, her pod shooting clear moments before her fighter slammed into the view screen of the Jaxarian bridge. The explosion was titanic, a sun blooming in the void. The flagship reeled, its bridge a shattered ruin. And War Master Craxus, the unyielding, the unbreakable, was no more. With his death, the Jaxarian fleet fell into disarray once more. And this time, there was no recovery. The human ships pressed their advantage, tearing into the faltering Jaxarians. One by one, the mighty warships fell, their hulls shattered, their crews consumed by the void. Until, at last, the final Jaxarian ship exploded into a blossom of fire, and silence fell across the battlefield. In the stillness that followed, a cheer went up from the human fleet, a cheer of triumph, of relief, of sheer, unbridled joy. Against all odds, against the might of an empire, they had prevailed. Humanity, the upstarts, the primitives, had turned the tide. The galaxy would never be the same. On the bridge of the Athena, Admiral Hale slumped in his chair, exhaustion and elation mooring on his face. They had won, at a terrible cost, with sacrifices that would echo through the ages, but they had won. Humanity had proven itself, had earned its place among the stars. But even as he savored this moment of triumph, Hale knew it was only the beginning. The Jaxarian Empire, though broken, was not destroyed. There would be more battles to come, more sacrifices to be made. The war was far from over. But for now, in this moment, humanity could stand tall and proud. They had faced the fire, and they had emerged, tempered and strong. The future was theirs to shape, theirs to defend. And defend it they would, with every ounce of courage and determination they possessed. For they were human, and they would never, ever surrender. In the aftermath of the great battle, a stillness fell across the galaxy. A stillness born of shock, of awe, and of a deep fundamental shift in the cosmic order. Humanity, the upstarts, the ones the Jaxarian Empire had dismissed as primitives, had proven themselves. They had not just survived the Empire's onslaught, but triumphed over it. The news spread like wildfire, racing from system to system, planet to planet. On 1,000 worlds, beings of every shape and hue gathered around view screens and listened with bated breath to the incredible tale. They heard of the bravery of the human fleet, of the indomitable spirit of Admiral Hale and his crew. They heard of the daring infiltration of Jax Prime, of the virus that had brought the Empire to its knees. And they heard of Mira Patel, the pilot who had given her life to strike the killing blow against the War Master. In the halls of power across the galaxy, leaders and diplomats scrambled to make sense of this new reality. Some rejoiced, seeing in humanity a new ally, a counterweight to the Empire's long-standing hegemony. Others feared, wondering if the humans would be content with mere survival, or if they would seek to carve out their own dominion among the stars. But all agreed on one thing: the galaxy had changed, irrevocably and forever. On Earth, the news was greeted with a mix of jubilation and somber reflection. They had won, yes, but at a terrible cost. Thousands of lives had been lost, brave men and women who had given their all in defense of their home and their species. Memorial services were held, tears were shed, and vows were made. Never again would humanity be caught unprepared. Never again would they allow themselves to be at the mercy of another's ambition. The United Earth Alliance, forged in the fires of war, turned its attention to the stars. New ships were built, new weapons designed. Humanity would be ready, come what may. But even as they prepared for an uncertain future, they also reached out. Ambassadors were sent, treaties negotiated. Humanity sought allies among the stars, species who had also chafed under the Empire's yoke. For they knew that the Jaxarians, though beaten, were not broken. The Empire would rebuild, would come again. And when they did, humanity would need all the friends it could get. In the heart of Jaxarian space, on the smoldering ruin of Jax Prime, a new War Master rose from the ashes of the old. War Master Zol, a cold, calculating creature, looked out over the shattered remnants of the once proud Jaxarian war machine. "We have been humbled," he said, his voice a rasping whisper that carried across the assembled ranks of soldiers and technicians. "We have been brought low by those we considered beneath us." His eyes, dark and glittering, swept across the crowd. "But we are Jaxari. We do not accept defeat. We do not bow to lessers." A murmur swept through the assembly, a rustling of agreement and anger. "We will rebuild," Zol continued, his voice rising. "We will rearm. And when the time is right, we will strike back. We will make the humans pay for this insult 1,000-fold." A cheer went up, a roar of fury and vengeance. The Jaxarians, a people of pride and power, had a new purpose, a new enemy. And they would not rest until humanity was ground to dust beneath their claws. In the depths of space, Admiral Hale stood on the bridge of the Athena, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. The ship was quiet now, the crew taking a well-earned rest after the chaos and fury of the battle. But Hale couldn't rest. His mind was racing, grappling with the enormity of what they had achieved and the challenges that lay ahead. They had won a great victory, yes, but he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to his core, that it was only the beginning. The Jaxarians would return, driven by wounded pride and an insatiable thirst for vengeance, and they would not be the only threat. Other species, other empires, would see humanity's rise and take notice. Some might seek alliance, but others would see a new rival, a new threat to their own ambitions. The galaxy was vast, and it was filled with dangers humanity was only beginning to comprehend. But as he looked out at the stars, Hale felt a flicker of something else, something warm and bright, kindling in his chest. Humanity had faced the impossible, had stared into the jaws of annihilation, and they had not faltered. They had stood tall, had fought with courage and ingenuity, with a fierce, unyielding determination. They had proven themselves worthy of their place in the cosmos. And as long as that spirit endured, as long as humanity held fast to its courage and its resolve, Hale knew they would never be truly defeated. The future was uncertain, yes. It was filled with perils and challenges, with trials that would test them to their very limits. But it was also filled with possibility, with the chance to explore, to discover, to reach out and grasp the wonders of the universe. And humanity, united and unbowed, would seize that chance with both hands. Hale smiled, a small, fierce smile. The Jaxarians, and any others who might stand in their way, would learn the true meaning of human resolve. For they were the children of Earth, the inheritors of a legacy of struggle and triumph. They had climbed from the cradle of their world, had reached out and touched the stars, and they would not be denied their destiny. With a final nod to the endless expanse before him, Hale turned back to his duties, to the never-ending work of keeping his ship and his crew ready for whatever might come. The war was over, but the adventure, the true adventure, was just beginning. And humanity, bold and resolute, would meet it head-on, ready to write their name across the stars in letters of fire and light. The end.